Alpha One Drop Zone presents Honoring Our Veterans, a series of interviewing our military veterans. Our purpose is to reconnect our country with our veterans and our history.
Hello, my name is Steve Gonzalez, Vice President of Marketing Community Relations with Alpha One Drop Zone. It's our privilege today to interview one of our World War II veterans, Luke Kissick. We're excited about that, Luke, and thank you. First of all, let me shake your hand and tell you thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
And we can't thank you enough. I hope you understand that. We met last year, I think for the first time, and I've seen you in between, and what you've done is phenomenal with your military career, military intelligence operations, and your books that you've written, and just so many other things. So I guess we'll talk about basically your military service. First of all, when did you join the military, Luke?
Well, I joined the National Guard in January of 1941.
Okay, so you joined before Pearl Harbor started.
Oh, yes, before Pearl Harbor.
What do you remember about Pearl Harbor? What do you remember about that day?
Well, it was quite a shock, I know. I know that I was in the hospital at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. We'd taken the Guard, National Guard up to Fort Leavenworth, and I was in the hospital, and all of a sudden the nurses and everyone in the area there was dashing off here and there, making loud remarks, and I asked what was wrong, and they said it was Pearl Harbor was attacked, and they were expecting an invasion of the western part of the United States.
Wow. Through our conversations, Luke, you had mentioned that during your military service that you were a combat military intelligence officer, and that you were with part of the 74th Squadron, 14th Air Force, 23rd Fighter Group. So can you elaborate on that?
Yes, my first responsibility and duty with the Air Forces was to go to intelligence school, which I did. It was located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I went to that school and took the course that was offered for combat intelligence. I had worked prior to that, however, with the Guard as the intelligence chief, so I think that was somewhat the reason that I was possibly selected to go to the intelligence school. And I went to that school, and from that point was transferred, or in fact I was also requested that I'd like to go to China, because I had been reading and studying quite a bit about what the Flying Tigers were doing over there. I was definitely interested and thought I'd like to be part of that.
Okay, so your outfit, actually your nickname is the Flying Tigers, right? That was your nickname of your squadron, right? The Flying Tigers?
Well, the 74th Squadron had several different names, and I don't remember all of them, but the last name that we had for the 74th Squadron was guerrilla squadron.
Oh, okay. Okay. I remember last time we visited a while back, you met some of the greatest dignitaries in the world through your military intelligence. Can you elaborate on some of those military briefings that you had?
Well, yes, I met several different people during the war years. I met most of the top officers that were assigned as because I was a military briefing officer. But during the years overseas, my wife was traveling around the world on a Norwegian freighter and made a call to where I was assigned. And we were invited as guests of Generalissimo and Madam Chiang Kai-shek in Taiwan. It was funny how that all came about. My wife had borrowed the cook's bicycle to tour around in Taipei, and she became lost and didn't know her way back. Well, being a blonde, she created quite a crowd around her in Taipei, and Madam Chiang Kai-shek, who was doing some trading in the city, wanted to know what was going on. Well, she came over and she met my wife, and as a result, we were invited as guests to their home in Taipei.
Wow. So you had dinner with the leader of China at that time. Was it just you and your wife and Chiang Kai-shek and Madam Chiang Kai-shek?
Yeah, that's all it was.
Oh, that's awesome. That is quite a story. Some of your military briefings, you briefed some of the, I guess, previous presidents of the United States. Is that correct, Luther? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I was a military briefing officer to 3 presidents. The first president was Kennedy, John Kennedy, and then it followed to Johnson, and then my latter, a little later in the war years, was the briefing of the elder Bush, George Bush. At that time, I was a member of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Actually, I was the first man selected for the Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington, D.C. when it was formed. And as a result of that job that I had, I came in contact with usually the highest officials in the government there, and was offering and giving briefings off and on, military briefings on what the situation was and where it was leading it.
When you was with the 74th Squadron, you planned combat missions, right? You planned all the missions?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question, if you don't mind sharing with me. What was the greatest mission that you organized?
Well, the greatest mission, I had planned before this 2 pretty outstanding missions that were sent to Nanking. Nanking was the Chinese capital at that particular time. And of course, the Japanese were always trying to work against Nanking. Well, two different missions I planned up there. They were to attack aircraft trying to catch them by surprise. Each mission at two different times. One was recorded with 47 aircraft destroyed in the air and on the ground, and the other one, believe it or not, was 46 aircraft destroyed. But the outstanding mission, and it's been known as the outstanding mission, air fighter mission of World War II, was one that I planned while we were operating behind the Japanese lines as a squadron off of one of the airfields that was constructed to recover Jimmy Doolittle's B-25s from their strike earlier in the war. In that particular mission, I briefed my commanding officer, Pappy Herbst, that I thought that the Japanese would have to evacuate their 300 aircraft that they had in the Southwest Pacific at that time, because the Navy was making it too hot for them to operate. Well, the Japanese did evacuate. They would fly very close to where we were based. They were flying along the coastline, and we were out operating behind the Japanese lines near the coastline. Well, I didn't think it was too wise to try to tackle that larger aircraft with what we had. We could only muster about 20 aircraft fighters, friendly fighters, that I would wait until they landed at 5 different airfields in the Shanghai area, and we would hit 3 of the 5. Well, we did. We pulled off a strike and hit them like they were sitting ducks, and the photography, infrared photography, which recorded the fires, the burning, the ashes, and also a American prisoner of war camp was based on the edge of this one airfield. And those prisoners have told me personally in writing of the number of aircraft and how they described the strike. Well, in that one mission alone, I was credited with 102 aircraft destroyed on the ground and in the air.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Well, God bless you, Lou, for what you've done for our country. Like I said, we cannot thank you enough. It's greatly appreciated. Another question I want to ask you, when we bombed Hiroshima with an atomic bomb, do you remember that? Can you say anything about that, your memory about that?
Well, I felt the bomb was really something that did the trick, and I don't think the war could have been won very easily unless something pretty catastrophic like that happened. Then I was rather impressed by the development and the way the mission was flown.
Great, fantastic. Another question I'm going to ask you, after the war, what was your feelings after the war was over, when you came back, to our USA?
Well, after the war was over, I guess I just took a breather because I stayed for 30 years with the Air Force, and I was being groomed for key positions in Washington, but I refused them because they were too political. And there's two things that I distaste very much. That is politics and political writings to build somebody up. The untruth spread publicity. It's sometimes, and most of the time, it's very untrue, and it's been drafted just to blow the individual up. As an individual, I'm a very quiet person, and I tried to maintain my closed mouth in all of these situations. In fact, the story of the greatest mission, which was flown by my squadron near the end of the war, the information was not released until 1 year later.
Wow. Jeez. I noticed when I met you last time we had our visit that you shared with me one of the books that you wrote, Guerrilla One, and also you wrote another book, The Greatest Threat. So that's phenomenal what you've done in your lifetime. I want to thank you for spending time with us, and see, we want these stories like this to be told to reconnect with our country, youth and other people from years to come. We're losing some of that, and you're going to be a big part of that, and we thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve, and I think it's wonderful what you're doing so that the younger generation has some knowledge of really what might have happened and that could happen in the future and how to contend with it.
I know you retired as a colonel, is that correct? You were a colonel, you retired
colonel.
And last but not least, you're going to have a birthday in February, right? You'll be 98 years old in February, is that right?
Yeah, I'm 90, I'll be 98 in February.
Right. I'll come down and wish you a happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
I'll write it down on my calendar. Well, thanks a lot and God bless.
Well,
we appreciate your time and your talent.
Well, thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.